Welcome to the Athletes Health Podcast here, talking to athletes, coaches, leaders, anyone we can really learn some tips, tricks, tools from in that mental side. I like mental side of the game, but one thing I have been doing is going more on that mental health side. I want to talk about both of the cases because obviously I am with the athletes health so much in the performance space, so the mental health kind of ties right in it. And so through kind of actually the Brighton app that I kind of just helping up, Z, my guest here is helping up. I got connected with Zion Z Givens. Pretty cool thing you guys got going on here too, Z. I wanted if you just could introduce yourself, kind of what you're doing, and we will go from there, my guy.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. Thanks, Gabe, for having me on, man. Yeah. So, like Gabe said, my name is Zion Z Givens. I go by Z out here in the community. Born and raised in the sunny part of Tucson, Arizona. People like to call it Dirty T. I call that home. But now living in Phoenix. And man, been doing this up. So, like Gabe said, we started an organization called Up to It. Me and my father. And it's been a blast. We started back in January of 2024. So we're about to hit up our year mark this year in January. So we're super excited. A lot of opportunity has come our way, and it's been flourishing, and it's just been super successful. And I've been super proud to be able to do it with my father.
Dude, I had no idea you were doing this just this year. How did
Yeah,
that?
man.
So you got to back me up. How did this kind of start up?
Yeah, so
I'm
let's do
really
it, man. So my pops has been in the prevention field, nonprofit field for about 20 plus years. He was a director at Kodak Behavioral Health Services, which was a huge substance abuse kind of just clinic and just industry leaders in that industry. So he was there for about 15 to 20 years. In 2015, 2014, he had a budget cuts, so they got rid of his department, and he was like, "Well, I don't know what's next for me." But he was like doing this public speaking thing, and that's what he was always passionate about, was doing direct service. And he was doing it for about a year and a half, but he had two kids and a wife to take care of, and he realized that it was too big of a risk for him. So he started his nonprofit organization in 2016, 2017, and ever since then, now been 8 years since he's been running it. And for me, I was just passionate about the work that he was doing. But growing up, I didn't know what
yeah.
he was doing and what it was called. But I just knew every time I went into his office that there were snacks in his office, and it was kind of like kid friendly. And I was like, this is dope. Like, let me check what is it that he does really. And there was one day where he came into my school and did a assembly presentation for the student body. It was on a leadership, and I remember one of my peers and behind me said, "Damn, I wish that was my dad. Like, I wish that was my dad." And hearing that at such a young age, that to hear my dad had such a huge impact on this person who was sitting behind me, I don't even know who this person was or who they are, but to have that impression, that impact on that person's life, or just speaking to them, was huge for me. And I was like, you know what? I want to have that same feeling and that same kind of impact that my dad has on these young people. And I don't not a father, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to be like, oh, I wish that was my dad, because I'm too young to be a dad. But I was like, you know what? Like, well, what about like the cool big brother or the uncle or that one big cousin that you can go to? So that's probably what got me interested into the field, was my dad's just um being in it for so long and just seeing his impact. And then how we started Up to It was basically, I was working at a nonprofit up here in Phoenix, and it was great. I mean, I think I got a lot of tools from it, and I was like, you know what? I'm doing this work for this nonprofit, which is amazing, but I think we can take this on the road, because in the nonprofit we only served the state of Arizona. We didn't really leave the state, but I was like, I think I can take this on a tour or on the road. And I told my dad about it. He was like, you know what? Let's do it together. Like, let's start this up. Let's do it together and see where we end up. And that's how we started Up to It.
All right. So you went from working. Well, actually, it'd be back further than that. You just saw what your dad was doing, kind of working the substance side. That got you in like kind of the nonprofit side. But
Hmm.
then you felt, and I see it too, like your reach could be more than that.
Yeah.
And then your dad was like, hey, let's do it together, let's hop on it. And so that was all kind of, when did you like kind of start getting those ideas or thinking about it? And then 2024 is when you like start sending it and making it happen. But I'm
Yeah.
curious on that part too.
No, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, this was something I was thinking about forever. I think ever since I was young, I wanted to be some kind of entertainer, but I wasn't really talented musically. Like, I I think I'm a great singer. Some people might argue with that, but it's okay. But I couldn't rap. I played basketball growing up my whole life. That was the sport that I thought I was gonna go D1 and go to the NBA and do that thing and have my own little. I thought I was gonna be like a Jared McCain, like how he is today, or just an entertainer and able to play ball and hoop and do those things. But I had to be realistic with myself. I was only like 5'10". I wasn't jumping out the gym. I wasn't shooting lights out. I was more of the floor general. And I was like, you know what? Let me focus on academics. But it was always been in the back of my mind. Like I wanted to entertain people. My dad will, if you got him on this podcast, he'll tell you all the stories about me being younger and wanting to entertain. So I knew that I wanted to be in a space where not that I was the center of attention, but where I could do something that captured and captivated people's attention in a positive way. And my dad's the same way. He loves to sing. He's a great singer. He's probably one of the greatest singers I've heard sing.
And you didn't get
And
that gene? You,
oh
you
man,
didn't come back to
I
it?
I like to believe I did, but some people like to argue with me and say I'm not really him when it comes to singing, but I think I'm really him when I'm singing. But it's okay. It's all right. It's
All
okay.
right, all right.
Whatever. I'll give him a little taste after the podcast. But when we so my dad, we wanted to do something, and basically I started a YouTube channel when I was young, and that was like kind of like my stepping stone into the world of entertainment, content creation, and I really just didn't want to be part of that negativity that I've been seeing throughout, social media. I mean, as you see it probably frequently when you're scrolling, just a lot of people feed into that negativity. And I was like, if we can find a way that we can uplift and inspire people to make positive life choices, like let's do that. Let's do that. And that's always been my thing is I've always been a positive person. My dad, that's how I was brought up, to be positive, to be kind. I said, well, let's share that with other people and let's let's take this on the road. That's pretty much that answers your questions. How long this has been in the making? I think it's been ever since I was younger. I knew that this is something that I wanted to do.
No, it was something that you always, because that's good to hear, because I can see that just in kind of how we've been talking on the side too, Z, with the kind of like that energy you bring to it. Like
Yeah.
that makes more sense, that you kind of have always kind of wanted to, like, you didn't know necessarily like what that performance, what that like influence was going to be like. But like because one thing I was wondering was how long have you been like working on your speaking skills, like your presentation skills? Because I can tell just by seeing what you guys do that like you're pretty good at it. But it sounds like you've been doing it for a long time, whether it is just on the YouTube in front of the camera, just
Mhm.
trying classes, and at the nonprofit, just all across the board, you've been kind of doing some of that stuff. And
Yeah, I don't know what I think. Honestly, it's like natural talent. You know how people, when you're an athlete, I mean, you got natural talent. You're born up with these abilities. But I think one of the things was I just love to yap. Like I just love to talk, and it wasn't even about me. Like I love just talking to people and hearing people's stories. And when I heard that people wanted to hear my stories, I was like, well, you know what? I don't want to just be boring about it and just give you like, yeah, this is what I did. Da, da, da. Like if I can give you a feeling, if I can take you on this roller coaster of emotions that I was feeling, that's what I wanted to give you. And I think the art of storytelling is kind of being lost in translation sometimes, where it's not valued as much as it used to. And I'm a big hip hop head, right? Like I grew up listening to hip hop all the time. I mean, I listen to all the other genres of music, but that was kind of what inspired me too to be a good storyteller, was to listen to rap music and listen to the cadences and listen to the different kind of figurative language that people use. And I loved English class growing up. Like that was my favorite subject growing up. And I think that's what helped me with my speaking, was I was able to use, and that's what my favorite subject was, about the figurative language, was like, I wanted to know the onomatopoeias. I wanted to know the alliterations. I wanted to see how can I invoke feeling while making it fun, where I don't really have to rap, but I can tell you a story to feel like it is a song. It feels like a performance. It feels like something of that nature. So I mean, and it helps that I had a great mentor, who my dad,
yeah,
just to have coach me up, and my mom too. She's a beast when it comes to word choice and vocabulary and evoking feeling. I was like, man, you're giving me some great tips. And I've always been open to criticism as well. I think that's the one thing that I would tell people, if you are trying to get into public speaking or just anything that you want to be great at, be open to critiques and criticism, because I think that's what made me a better speaker, wholeheartedly.
you got to be open to the criticism in probably anything that you're doing. And hearing that storytelling thing and taking it from music and lyricals, that kind of just hits home to a whole different way for me because I like in high school and school, like for my story, I was just like only focused on like sports. Like for me, there's just something crazy about like jumping that I just loved, like performance and like quick athleticism. So like I was good at math, but the English and stuff, like ACT score, not good. But since I started doing kind of this stuff, Z, and like I really wanted to like put that performance in like different aspects, kind of like the speaking, because I know that's how you get the message out.
Mhm.
I've realized the music, the hip hop, the flow of it, just the actually what they're saying, the pauses, like you said,
Mhm.
is so important. And I actually now I see that in everything you do too. And I mean, it's so important. That's just crazy to hear you actually just vocalize that and bring it to the awareness and the presence behind how you get the message out.
Yeah,
It's
and that
awesome.
that was a great question. That was probably I don't think I ever told anybody that. That's the reason why I love hip hop so much and why it translates into my day to day life. I mean, I think I just go around just saying people, yeah, you're a good speaker. I'm like, yeah, thank you, and then that's it. Nobody asks like how or why. So I like that question. That was a great question.
It's still just as lyrical and it's the
Right.
storytelling. Like that's what really hooks
Mhm.
people. So and
1000%.
so that kind of leads me to something I was wondering with your up to it stuff and what you and your dad are doing with
Mhm.
it's a business, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. What are some of the main messages you guys preach like out like
Yeah.
when you're telling these stories? Like what are some of the main things you guys are trying to spread awareness of?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. People are like, "Oh yeah, up to it. That's cool. Whatever. Cool. He talks." But you like, what does he speak on? That's a great question.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
know I guess I'll also say because I know like I always tell you like people on here like it's just a conversation. I just get questions like I didn't tell you any of these questions beforehand, but I mean I think you can like I think we just be talking and have the conversation. So
And that's the best way to have podcasts, man, when it's not scripted, when it feels natural and authentic. I think you have to really get to hear the other person or the guest's thoughts and what their day-to-day life is. So I love the format and love the layout. So to answer your question about up to it, man, we
perfect.
help youth, families, and organizations connect, communicate, and thrive together. And what we do is we do host workshops and presentations. We have a youth sector and then we have an adult sector. Right now, our youth sector is taking off. That's primarily my presentation that I give called oh yeah, thumbs up. It's called Am I Tripping? And that's a presentation on teen mental health. And I tell my story of how I was struggling with my mental health my senior year in high school, where it was where you hear all the things about your senior year where it's supposed to be this amazing, fun thing. But for me, it was something that was so scary and so different and so much change all at once. And nobody really prepares you for what's supposed to happen or what happens when that second semester comes after winter break. How quick everything changes and how now in the eyes of the law, you're 18 years old and now you're an adult and you have other responsibilities and you get bombarded with all the questions of what are you going to do next? What major are you going to major in? Are you going to stay with that friend group? Are you going to move to this college? And you get, you've been there
Life.
before.
Yeah.
You're right. Exactly. And you're like, wait a minute. This last semester, I was just a high schooler, just going to high school. And now I'm getting all these questions about my future. And it really put me in a state of disassociation where I was having outer body experiences where I was feel like I was playing. I always tell the youth when I do present is I always felt like somebody was playing me as a video game at a bird's eye view and the camera angle. And it was scary for me because I went from somebody who was super empathetic, super positive and outgoing to somebody who felt numb, who couldn't feel anything, who was apathetic, who couldn't hold conversations longer than 2 to 3 minutes. And it was terrifying. So I share with them ways that they can help themselves and how I wish I would have advocated for myself sooner. Because I lived this way for 3 months. Like I lived this way for 3 months until enough was enough, and I had to tell my mom what was going on. But I really, in that presentation, tried to tell youth, you are your best advocate. Nobody can help you if you don't know what's going on. We can't help you. The adults can't help you if they don't know what's going on. So I really try to advocate for youth to be self advocates for themselves and how to help a friend and family member who may be struggling with their mental health. I give them a whole list of strategies, and it's a turn. I call it an educational turn up. I mean, it is heavy content, but we try to make it lighthearted and fun so that students are able to just keep their attention and stay engaged. So that's the youth sector, and then for our adult sector, that's the presentation that me and my dad host, and the presentation titled is "Conversations That Connect." And that's a fun presentation. I love when I get able to get on stage with my dad and we are able to do these presentations. And pretty much the whole gist of that presentation is helping adults figure out, how can they be the best parent they can possibly be for their youth and what that looks like. And our podcast is about having tough conversations for stronger connections. And how do you have those tough conversations? How do you gain trust within your youth to be a productive member of society? Because that's what we're doing as parents. That's what we're doing as trusted adults. Is we're preparing them to be adults. These kids, we're preparing them to be adults. And how can we make sure that they're productive members of society? So that presentation is a whole lot of fun. That one's we try to get into corporations. We noticed that when we put the pressure on educational systems like schools or after school activities, that the turnout for adults are low. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they don't show up, they don't think it applies to them, or they don't want to hear somebody teach them how to parent their child. And that's not what we're here to do. We're just here to give you a little bit more insight to how maybe how you can do something that benefits your child a little bit more in a little bit more healthy ways. So we decided to go, you know what? Let's figure out how we can meet the adults where they're at. And adults spend most of their time at work, right? So we've been trying to hit up these organizations to get in there and do it as a professional development presentation so that we can go in there and that the adults can get this information that's super valuable, because there's a huge disconnect when we go to the youth, and then the youth goes home and it gets all this great information and tries to apply it in their household, but their adult in their life hasn't got the same information. They're like, no, that's not how we do things here. So they have to go back to reverting to old ways that help them live in kind of in survival mode. But if we can marry those two together, where the adults get the same education the youth are getting, then we have a better bridge here where now they can have civil discourse and they can even be in healthier relationships.
Dude, that's so cool to hear. Cause so one thing that I'm doing with my stuff, my business and my programs that I have besides my coaching is like I have a whole thing for like the kid, like the up and coming athletes.
Yeah.
But then I have like a whole nother small section that's for like the parents, like how can they apply it? Because what you said of like you can show the kids this and this or that, but then they're going back home to like that place that isn't so good or whatever else the situation is. Everything that just was talked about, like in the presentation that you did, it doesn't really do much because they're right back in their nurture state, and it doesn't help them out too like at all really within that.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. So I'm glad you have that component to your program as well, because it's so important, especially for these athletes, man, especially for these athletes.
When you do your stuff, how long, like let's say for like the organization one, for like at corporates, like when you go there, how long are you usually like giving these presentations for? Are there like things that you like kind of get people involved with stuff too as you're talking, or like how does that usually work to get the parents or whoever's listening to kind of get more awareness behind this and the tough conversations?
Yeah, because you're right, man. The timing is a huge things for organizations. They're like, well, you're eating up our productivity. We can do this and we can do that. But I don't know if you've seen this stat that came out, or not even a stat, just a report that came out from the Surgeon General that parents are more stressed than they've ever been this whole year. This generation of parents are the most stressed out parents ever. And when I share that with corporations or organizations that bring us in, or that when we're talking and having discourse of like, should we bring you in? Should we not? Well, if our parents are stressed and these adults are stressed and they're going to work stressed, don't you think that lowers productivity? Don't you think that they're thinking about things outside of work that are maybe impairing their judgment or impairing their ways that they operate in their day-to-day lives or in their work life? And the answer is yes, like 1,000%. And we ask, as a nation, we ask people to compartmentalize, but that's just not possible as a human being. I mean, when you show up to work, you got to show up as your full authentic self. So when I talk to these organizations and corporations about, hey, the benefit of bringing us here and having a 45-minute discussion is super valuable. It's invaluable for you. Not only does it save the corporation or organization money, but you're also showing interest in your employees, that you care about their well-being outside of work. And I think that's the biggest thing for working class folks, is that they want a corporation and organization that actually cares about what's going on with them outside of work. And I think that's what shows a difference and culture for different organizations and corporations. So to answer your question, about 45 minutes for organizations and corporations, because again, I get it. We don't want to eat up too much time of your productivity or things that they should be doing. But 45 minutes to save some lives or to change some people's lives, I think it's well worth it. I think it's well worth it. And then for the adult or for the youth education side, we do anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. And that's there. Both of them are high level, high energy. We don't come out doing things that are kind of, I don't like to call them boring, but I think we don't want to be
Yeah.
boring. We don't want to be
Yeah.
lecturers. Like you've been in presentations where people just lecture, and that's horrible. But we really like to treat them as conversations because that's what it is. That's the best way to present and the best way to get or to educate people is to have conversations, and you'll figure out that what they know and what they don't know, and where you can really dive in more with those things that they're uncertain about. And that's the best way to educate folks.
And that was just crazy because I didn't know that. And that just brings so much kind of just awareness to helping out just in the one category can help in so many other categories too, which is so keen because I'm just thinking back to like, and to the parents especially, like to some things that I've done where like it's the parents half most of the time because I didn't fully know how this was going to go when I started this year as well. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. That's why when you said 2024, but I'm going to tie this to your stuff because like the parents will reach out and be like, hey, yeah, we maybe had this conversation or we tried this, but it doesn't seem like it's working. And they got like all the potential they could. And so going to like the organizations to help bring awareness to what you're doing sounds pretty insightful. And with what you're doing, of the tough conversation part is something I was also just wondering about, like to dive deeper in that kind of category as well. Cause I just know parents have told me sometimes they try to have some of these conversations. Other times, they just don't even really try to, like, I don't even know where to start. I mean, you should just work with them and we'll go from there. But so like when you guys are talking about tough conversations, what does that really like mean in the essence?
That's a great question. I think what we mean when we're talking about tough conversations, I think a lot of people go straight to like the sex conversation or the no drugs and alcohol conversation. Like that's where their brain goes automatically. And yes, those are tough conversations that we encourage parents to have with their youth, but we also encourage them to have conversations about their past, right? Parents' past. Like, why are you parenting the way that you're parenting? Have you been taught that throughout your life? And it gives a little bit insight into for your youth to understand where you're really coming from, and not that you hate them or that you dislike them. It's like, no, this is all I know, because we are really empathetic and understanding of, there's not a really good strict book on how to parent, right? There's some great advice and there's great development things that you can take into consideration, but at the end of the day, you're going to parent how your parents parent you, right? So when we talk about tough conversations, is going into that wheelhouse of admitting when you're wrong. I think that's so hard for parents to acknowledge, is that your kid and your student want to hear when you made a mistake. They don't want to see you be perfect, and that's one of a tough conversation to have. That me as a parent, I'm not perfect, and when you tell your kid that, they're like, you know what? If mom and dad are not perfect, that's fine, but they're making the best out of these situations. Another tough conversation could be just other ones that are uncomfortable to have, right? Uncomfortable conversations, meaning maybe about family history of addiction. I think we had conversations about that as me and my dad were growing up, and my dad was raising me, and my parents they let me know our family history of it when it comes to addiction. And they let me know that I'm prone to be an addict if I misuse substances. That's just real. That's just facts. But you have to be able to acknowledge those things and lead into those uncomfortable conversations. And I think I think parents want to have these conversations and they try to have these conversations, but they don't know how to have them without lecturing. I think it's the mix, the missed opportunity, or they do it at a time where their youth is already overstimulated or they had a rough day and they're like, you know what? And then you as a parent may have had a great day and you're like, well, let's have this conversation now because I'm in the mood. But your youth is like, nah, I'm not in the mood to have this conversation. So it's about timing. It's about proximity too. We always find out that with young men specifically, it helps to have conversations with these young men when they're doing something, when you guys are building something. One of the best conversations to have is, I'm not a mechanic at any means, but when people are into that type of thing, great conversations can happen when you're working on a car together and you're able to have these conversations and you're not eye to eye or face to face, but you're doing something with your hands or you're playing catch and you're having these conversations. Or my dad loved to have these tough conversations with me when I'm in the back of the truck and he's driving and we're going for a drive. Those were the perfect times for me to have those tough conversations with him because it didn't feel so intimidating. It felt natural. He can break eye contact when he wanted to. He can only look in the rearview mirror to see me, and I can see him. But those little things is what we're teaching the adults about, how those little things really do mean something, like you keep saying, right?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So let me back that up because you were talking about the people's like past, like the parents or whoever the case is, even the kids, their past kind of shape what they are, and that's kind of this like another concept for that is just like their biases shape what they are, and I have a couple things that I do within this too, just to show people, like you can look at the same picture that like one of those pictures that like show many different pictures in the picture,
Yeah,
and like you can show different people that picture. Someone's gonna see one thing, someone's gonna see the total different thing. And it's because of just all those biases, the past events that they don't know about, which is so interesting to teach and what you're doing. And
yeah,
I have also found that to like talking while doing something, not just like, because you brought up it's a lecture versus a conversation. And like, I
Mhm.
think that's so true after talking to you that like, you think, all right, we're going to sit down at the table across from each other. We need to have a talk. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
But if you're actually doing something, it's so much easier just in any conversation. Hey, thanks again for tuning into the Athletes Health Podcast. Your support really does mean a lot. We are passionate about bringing the mental health and performance topics to the forefront because, let's be real, the mental health crisis is a huge issue in society. Now, if you're enjoying the show, it would mean the world to us if you could just give it a 5-star review and share it with anyone who might benefit this message. Every bit helps in spreading the word and creating a stronger, healthier community. This podcast is just a small part of what we are doing at the Athletes Health. We work directly with teams, coaches, and individual athletes even to help them unlock their full mental performance and ultimately overall performance. Now, whether that's getting the competitive edge, breaking through mental blocks, or just leveling up in the mental gym, we're trying to cover it all with people. So thank you for listening and supporting our mission. Now let's get right back to the show. And one other thing you said there was the leaning in aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see if you could go in a little bit more in depth on that because I feel like that's huge. That sometimes it just needs a little push. It needs a little support. And I don't
Yeah.
even mean just like these tough conversations. I mean like anything too. Like that's something that people don't really think about. They're just like, oh, it's happening or it's not happening. But like sometimes it needs a little something, you know?
1,000%. Yeah, leaning in is so important. And one of the things we noticed with working with the adults, especially I work my age range that I really like to work with is the middle and high school students, or even
Okay.
early college. Anything younger, I'm a little. I don't know. I think I'm a little too blunt there for them to indulge and understand that. But there's a great speakers that are able to do lower than that. But when it comes to working with youth and their parents from middle school to high school and early college, is some parents let go or lose interest too soon, too early, right? I always tell
How
parents,
so?
I'm like,
Like, what do you
I'm
mean?
like, so when we're talking to the parents, we're thinking about I have them think about their elementary school days with their youth. They knew their best friends, they knew their best friends' parents, they knew what the parents did for the occupations, they knew what their kids were interested in elementary school, right? They knew all that on the back of their hand. But then in middle school, around 7th grade, parents start to lose interest in those hobbies or what their youth are interested in. And I give this example. I was doing a presentation one time, and a couple came up to me, and unironically and kind of unfortunately, it was a dad that came up to me, or the mom came up to me, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, this was a great presentation. Our daughter is doing this, that, and whatever." And the husband chimes in, it's like, "Yeah, our daughter's a great soccer player, and she's been playing soccer forever, and she loves it." And his daughter was there, And his daughter kind of looks at him and she's like, Dad, I haven't been playing soccer for about a year and a half. Like, I don't play soccer no more. I don't know what you're talking about. And that just shows that one example is plenty of examples that I can give about people losing interest too soon in what their youth wants to do or what they're doing. So they don't know who their best friends are. They can't even name them. They don't know what they're maybe interested in today. So we often ask adults to be curious, ask the fun questions. Yes, we can have these tough conversations, but if we're only having tough conversations, we're not having fun conversations about, yo, what do you want to do this weekend? Or what? Let's go out and have what we call them like day dates, right? With a parent or guardian. Like, let's go out and do something that you want to do. Because when you're able to have those fun moments and those fun conversations, and you lean in to those fun and awesome, great conversations, it's easier to have those tough conversations because they feel like they can trust you. They feel like they built this rapport with you. So when I say that they're losing interest too soon, I think that I should say they're losing curiosity
Yeah.
too soon with their youth.
It's just not the same. It's almost, I don't know, because I'm not a parent, but
Right.
it's almost just like, yeah, you're getting older. Like maybe I'm speculating just from people I've talked to. Like maybe it's like, maybe we'll try to give you some free reign, but then I always I see it come back. We're like, oh, maybe do the free reign, but then do like the things that you're saying, like still go out, have that weekend of that just like fun. It's not like supposed to be a
Mhm.
task or anything else. Because I see that even just like when I'm training kids, that like when we're doing stuff that's like fun, that things that they want to do, it's like then they're actually having fun. It's not just like a school thing for them.
Right.
It's not just a task like cleaning the house or hanging out.
Mhm.
So
'Cause
that's
they're bought in. They're bought in.
bought in. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point to bring on it. Um, so this was something else I was wondering. I have like at least two more points that I want to get through. So
Let's do it. No,
let's
no,
see.
no, I'm yapping over here, so you're
No,
good.
no, keep yapping. That's why I love. I'm just saying so I don't forget as well because these
For
came
sure.
up because I'll always talk about sports. So at some level, and see you play basketball. We'll touch on that in a little bit.
Let's do it.
But one thing I was also wondering was when you're doing, since you like to do more with the middle school and high school stuff,
Yeah.
what do you like so much about that too? And I'm not obviously you like doing stuff with the older people to like the
Yeah.
organization and stuff too, but something about doing it with the youth itself really kind of drives you. What do you like so much about that aspect in your mentoring
Man,
or
that's
anything else?
another great question. Gabe's coming in with these bangers. I love it. 'Cause I think you're maybe my first podcast that I've done while being part of Up to It. I've done podcasts on behalf of another organization, my other nonprofit that I was with. So no, this is
Mhm.
great. This is a great conversation.
Yeah,
I
man.
can't
I
wait
mean,
to pull up here.
I see what Up to It's doing, and once
Yeah.
again, I didn't know it was just this year, so it'll be
Right.
pretty cool to see what kind of flourishes within
No,
the
I
next
appreciate that.
times.
So, when we're talking about the youth aspect and why I love working with youth so much, and I share this with the youth at the end of every presentation because I get asked questions about like when I'm out in public and I'm networking, and people are like, "Well, why do you like to work with youth so much?" And I tell them it's because I never know who I'm talking to, right? I never know who I'm talking to, but I would love to find out who they become, right? I can be in a high school and talking to maybe a future president of the United States. I could be talking to the next person that finds a cure for infectious diseases. I could be talking to the next person that invents revolutionary technology for our civilization. Like I don't know who I'm talking to, but I always tell youth I would love to find out who I did have a chance to talk to, and I would love for them to find out who they become in this lifetime. Because I mean, my biggest thing is with my team mental health is also about suicide awareness, right? It's about there's so much more to this life, and we saw a spike in 2021, 2022, the COVID year of youth dying by suicide, right? And I I hate it because one, that's a young life lost, but what would have that young person become? If they just had somebody in their corner that told them that, this is worth it. Like the pain that you're going through, everything that you're going through is worth it on the other end. There's something that's going to come out of it that's positive. And, every time I have an opportunity to tell a youth that's maybe struggling with their mental health and contemplating suicide, I want to see who you become. That's the one will that you have to live is to make me see who you become. I'll take it. But maybe even what's even more powerful is to see who you become. I mean, you're so young. When you're 14, 15 years old, you think the world is, you're getting older and that's it. But the world is so much more open to you when you turn 18 to 21, there's so much more to explore, so much more to see. So I think that's why I love talking to the younger folks in middle school and high school, and also because they have a kind of an idea of where they want to go or where they think they want to go. So it's always cool to empower and uplift them in that way.
Yeah, they got the idea, but then they ultimately, who knows what it'll be, you know? And that's the
Right.
fun part of it. Like you said, that 18 and 21, and then even plus after that, no idea where it will go. That's crazy.
1,000%. a
And
thousand percent.
with you saying, I've kind of thought about it, but I've never articulated it, and so I love to hear this from you that you like to. What? All right, tell me one more time. I can listen to it again, but you want to ask them, or you tell them to reach back out to you, or like, I want to see where you end up, or
Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's like when I say when I want to see them reach out, back out, or I want to see them where they end up or what their purpose is. Maybe it's them like 15 years down the road and they see me on Instagram, they comment, and I'm like, oh, dang, that's cool. I'm able to see where you've been at. I mean, I think that's the biggest great thing about social media is that you're able to keep up with folks that maybe you didn't know you had an impression on, or you're able to, and people hit you up after presentations where they weren't even paying attention to you. It seemed like they weren't even paying attention, but then you leave that school and then you get an Instagram DM from that student and they're like, "Oh, I love that presentation. It was so great. Thank you so much for coming." And you're like, "Dude, you gave me the hardest time being there, but you found value in it." And that's awesome. That's one of the best parts. So when I'm talking about, I want to see where they end up. Maybe it's on the news. Maybe I'm
yeah.
like, see them. I'm like, oh, I think I talked to them that one time in their middle school or high school. So that's what I mean by that.
And to even to tell them that, I think even makes it even better because I'm thinking back to the few, because one thing I really like admire from like what you're doing, Z, is I'm trying to do more of the speaking stuff too,
Yeah.
and to give them that message of like, reach back out to me, let me know what's happening to see, because that just built, you're not just another speaker there, like just giving another message, you know,
Yeah.
like you're actually making the connections. And I'm just thinking to some of the people who I have like talked in front of, but then
Mhm.
also like who I've just, on social media and stuff, but those in-person connections are something else. And like when you can make it actually in person versus just on social media, it's like, yeah, I actually know you. It's not just
Yeah.
some name on a screen and I don't even recognize you half the time. That's a
Exactly.
huge point.
It is. It's so good. Those in-person conversations that you have, even before or after a presentation. I try to make sure I stick around 30 to 25 minutes longer just to linger. Or if it's after my session and there's lunchtime, I'm usually trying to get in the cafeteria with them and talk and just, not about what we talked about. Maybe some of the students bring it up, but man, I'm a huge sports head. I'm a huge hip hop head. Let's talk about it. Let's talk shop. Go ahead, talk smack about my team. I'll talk smack about your team. Like the friendly banter that's able to happen. And some of these students are so creative that they want to show me their music, right? That they're creating or that they're making, and that always brings a smile to my face. There was a I'll shout out my home, this the young homie from where was I at in Kentucky? I was in Lyon County, Kentucky. This student his name is Lil JJ, and he showed me his rap, his music, and man, it was so dope. So shout out Lil JJ, man. Gotta show love to him.
That's perfect. Cause I mean, that's one of the other things too, like getting that up and coming success, that up and coming hustle to say whatever the case is. Like, that's what I'm trying to do too, is like the community or just people you see putting in the work, like talking about it with them, like, hey, and because you obviously have a little more experience in it, you have a little more background. And we, like me and you both, can learn so much from you. Like you probably learned so much from your dad in all the sense,
So
but then to
yeah.
even pass it down, like in those little lunch table connections. That's one kid was, or a high schooler I was just talking to. He was like, yeah, they're kind of, when I was a, what did he say? Jit? He was like, when I was a jit, I knew him. And I was like, what? I'm not that much old. I'm not older, really. I was like, what is that? He said, when I was young, I was like, whatever, man. So like you're saying, it's that those connections, those conversations are so important with it.
And it keeps you young too. I mean, like you said, Gabe, we're not that far removed from them, but sometimes their lingo just changes so quick, and you're like, "What does that mean?" And then it gives them a chance to be a master of something that they can teach you as an adult, and you're like, "Okay, cool." And they feel like they accomplished something. Like, "Oh yeah, I taught the speaker this new word. Oh, that's awesome, right? Skippity
Yeah,
toilet rid, sigma, all that crazy stuff that's happening." So
exactly. For anyone younger person listening, like we learn just as much as they learn from us, which is another huge point because that's kind of how things kind of flow almost with it. It's
yeah,
insane.
1,000%, 1,000%.
The last thing, so at least one more thing I wanted to talk to you about was kind of
Yeah.
just like your history, because I know you've said you're a basketball guy,
Yep.
and I know basketball culture is right in there with hip hop culture.
That's
And
100%.
if you're still talking that shop, I love talking shop on any of that stuff too.
Let's
When
do
you're,
it.
what were some of the like biggest lessons you learned from that stuff growing up? Maybe it intertwined it together. I don't know like at all, but kind of just in that general theme that maybe you are applying now or just in any sense. So there's so many that you
Yeah.
can.
Dude, I was when I was growing up, man, I was a confidence player. Like I didn't know what that meant at the time, but my dad would say little things to me, and now I get it. It makes sense to why he was saying these things because he. It's funny because he wasn't my coach at all. He let the coaching. He let the coaches coach. But when I got home, he was very much the team like psychologically. He was just always because he's a trained therapist, right? So
Yeah.
he's like always into the psychology of sports or the psychology of just humans in general. So when we would talk, he would say things of like, "Oh yeah, I knew you're gonna have a rough day on the court." I was like, "Why?" Your body posture, the way that you came in and layup lines, you already look defeated. Or the way that you looked at the other team, I could tell that you're already defeated. They were 6'5", the point guard was 6'5", and you're only 5'10". I could already tell you lost that matchup by the way you were looking at that opponent. And I didn't know what he meant at that time. I was like, man, Hayden, he just hater. But now doing the work that I do now, I understand what he meant was I let I psyched myself out of all the bad games I've ever had in my life. It was because of me. I psyched myself out of the game already before I even touched the floor before tip off. Like you could tell when I was gonna have a good game when I put together 2 or 3 good passes or 2 or 3 assists or 2 or 3 rebounds consistently. When
Mhm.
I had those going, it was like, oh yeah, Z's going off today. Yep. They used to call me Little Barkley when I was like in 5th grade. I was a little bit huskier. But I was running the floor. I was rebounding all crazy. But it was people could tell when I was gonna have an off game, and people could tell when I was gonna have a really, really great game. But what that taught me was now in my public speaking is when you come out as confident and you believe in yourself more than anybody, man, what you're able to do is incredible. But you have to start believing in yourself. And the biggest thing I can say with basketball culture, when I say a shot's going in and I actually believe it, even no matter how I shot it, the shot's going in. Like because I maybe willed it that way, but also, when you say you're gonna make a shot, you may pay more attention to your form, or you pay more attention to your release point and all that good stuff. But in my head now, when I'm speaking, I know every gig's gonna go good. That's what I'm going. That's how I'm thinking when I get into it. When I get off the plane, when I get off the rental car, it's this. This is gonna go good. Even if I just only impact one life, this presentation is gonna go phenomenally. Even if I don't have a presentation, if my microphone cuts out, it's still gonna be a great presentation. But I learned that through my history with sports, right? That's how I learned that I need to be confident within myself before I go out and try to preach confidence into other people.
That's perfect. Cause this quick story too. I was just
Yeah.
talking to an athlete and they weren't even in season, but we were still kind of trying to connect some dots. And they like had to do a presentation for a class that their partner like was sick. So then they couldn't even come. So they had to cover the whole thing. And we were
Right.
just like, it kind of just ties back to your thing. Like, we're like, well, I want to use our sports lessons here with this since we can't talk about sports right now, but you use this stuff like your presentations. They don't always go as planned. You said the mic goes out or whatever the case is. Like,
Mhm.
you got to go in there and hope, not even hope, but have that confidence for that final take home, like you said, to impact one life or in like high schooler's journey of like just delivering the message, whatever, to get the grade, whatever the case is that they're
Right.
doing. But it is kind of that confidence is key. And ultimately why for my message, I like to just tie that sports with the life so much and what parents like to see. And then your thing of just the tough conversations, tying it to tough things like the speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone can go out there and do the energy and speak like you're doing, Z, and have that confidence behind it too, which is what I like
Right.
in the message that you're
No,
preaching. It's something special.
I appreciate that, and I love that you're tying all of the life. I think, man, sports is one of the best ways when sports mimics life so well. Like it's just so good when you're able to be a part of a team or even a solo sport, right? When you're thinking about boxing, when you're thinking about tennis or things like that. But team sports, man, I think I've learned so much throughout my young life through just team sports. I mean, those tough conversations of when you feel like you should be starting over another player, you have to have that tough conversation with your coach of like, what do I need to do to start? What do I need to do to improve? That's a conversation that you have to have as a player, not your parents. I think that's what gets messed up, is that a lot of
Yeah.
parents feel like they have to talk on behalf of their son or daughter to get that starting position to improve. But it's for a coach, from a coaching standpoint, if I hear a student come up to me and say, "Hey, what can I do to earn a starting position?" That lets me know that they're bought in and that they're gonna play better and that they're seeking improvement. Versus if I hear it from a parent, I'm gonna be like, like every parent wants their kid to start. Like, okay, cool, whatever. But it's nothing that better when a student comes up to you and says, "How can I get better? What can
That's
I do to
a
get the starting position?"
and that's a whole nother even topic of, I heard of a school that there was a newer school, like just a couple years, literally, and they've already cycled like a basketball coach every year, sometimes two per year, because the parents, and so this is something that your talks would be really well for. I'm not in that avenue yet. I need to,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
the parents are so much of those like sport parents that, are complaining or whatever else, that the coach, like, these are good, like this coach coming in, like he's supposed to be like the one, like, gonna turn this around, and he quits after 2 weeks. Like, what? It's crazy.
Uh, it's insane. It really is insane. And I'm not into. I mean, I would love to be a coach, but I don't think parents think about how much time it takes to establish a culture, right? In a new system. Like when you're a new coach and you're trying to implement a new system, you have guys that you didn't uh maybe not want on your team, but you didn't pick, right? When you come to this new, I'm thinking even NFL,
Yeah.
NBA, these coaches didn't pick these players. These are players that they got inherited, and they have to try to put them in a system that maybe that system doesn't work, and your kid might not be fitting that system. But you got to give it time, and you got to trust in the coach's ability to discern who can be on this team and who can play, who's bought into the culture and who's not. But that's when you have to take a back seat and let the coaches coach and let your youth figure it out. Because in sports, like life in sports, it's not fair, right? There's a lot of political aspects to it, but when you're able to let your youth navigate it their own, they're better off for it as an adult. And that's what we're preparing them for, is again that adulthood. We're not preparing them for high school basketball for the rest of their life. We're preparing them for the work life, for a family life, just to be a trusted adult. So I love that you're in that space, and I would love to talk more, even off the podcast, about ways that we can collaborate. Maybe here's some of these points to some of these parents.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of growth that we can get going. And so we'll have to do that. I had
For
one
sure.
more thing I want to ask
Let's
you
do it.
about, though, just because this is gonna be, I know, on your passion project too,
Yes.
of the hip hop type of deal. And we're gonna connect that to life too, because one thing that not too many people know, but a lot, like my like closest friends, they're all like really into like the fashion, hip hop, like media type of stuff, like that kind of industry. And I was just with one of them last weekend, and he was doing some video. They were doing some videos for like an artist, and he was like, "Man, the amount of things that go into like what the hip hop artists like have to do with like their, not just their music, but their connections, the marketing and everything. Like, I can't even articulate it so much, but I'm sure because my friends are more into it than I am, but I'm surrounded by it. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have some instances, or you just have studied the game of hip hop and the music industry, of how that even connects to life and anything like that. So I don't want to just kind of throw that stuff out there and see your perspective on any of that topic, since you brought up hip hop a couple times thus far. So
Yeah.
I wanted to hear it from you.
Man, love hip hop. That's why, man, I'm a huge J. Cole fan. If anybody want to know who my favorite artist is,
Right.
I'm a huge J. Cole fan. I
Solid.
think he's probably one of the best rappers still living and breathing on this earth. Don't debate me, debate yourself, because I'm biased already. I'm already gonna tell you all the things. But when it comes to hip hop and why I was so heavily influenced, because of the just what it started as, right? And hip hop is so young still too. I think we just celebrated 100 years of hip hop. Like, it's a super young genre compared to when you think about country, rock and roll, when you think
Yeah.
about pop music. It's still relatively young, but what its essence was bringing community together. That was what it all was about, was how do we have fun with music, and how do we share our narrative and our truths through music. And I think that was one of the things that hooked me, was when I hear my first album I ever listened to by myself was Kanye West, the College Dropout. That was my favorite album I ever listened to, front to back. And
Right.
when you're able to hear his story
Yeah.
through his through the album.
Insane.
It's insane, right? When you think about the quality of production and you're thinking about, dang, he produced this and he rapped on this
Yeah.
and he
Then you know
marketed it.
his whole story and everything he did behind it. And yeah.
It's
All right.
insane.
That's great.
It's insane. It's like, wow, and you have so much appreciation for it. But I always tell the youth now, when I'm listening to some of the music that's being played to this day, I'm kind of like, I don't know. There's new. I feel like I'm getting old now, and I'm becoming one of those old heads of like, oh, it's not what like hip hop was about in essence. But I get it. You know, hip hop is supposed to evolve and change, or if it doesn't evolve or change, it dies, right? So it has to go with the times. But that's what I really loved about hip hop. And when you think about your friends who are dealing with up and coming musicians, I used to do a podcast a while back ago called the Takeover Lounge podcast, and we just highlighted musicians in Arizona. That was our only thing, was up and coming musicians and rappers
Well,
in
that's pretty
Arizona.
sick. That's pretty
Yeah,
sick.
it was a lot of fun, and that's when you got to see all the back end work of what it really takes to be an up and coming musician. Like people, you know, we laugh at them like, oh, you're a SoundCloud rapper, or oh, you're a rapper from your hometown or whatever. But the work that goes into trying to get a record deal, or if just to be independent is what they call it, if you don't want to get a record deal, it's so hard. It's kind of like this public speaking thing where the hip hop business is not just the music business. It's the marketing business. It's the journalistic business. It's all these things all combined in one. So for me, I noticed soon with the public speaking thing was, it's not the public speaking business. I can speak, but it's the marketing and promotion business.
Yeah.
I'm in marketing. I need to market myself so I can get out to other states and other countries to give this message out. If I don't have any marketing behind it, it dies. There's no such thing as an up to it. There's no such thing as Z presenting at your school. Like there's so much more to it than just create raps and make music and then put it out and hopefully somebody sees it. It's so much more to it. So yeah, like you said, if we apply that to life, right? Sometimes the things you think you're gonna do it requires more work. It requires more work for you to do. You think you're gonna be, you know, whatever the next. I don't know. I was gonna say Ben Simmons, but don't be the next Ben Simmons, man. Don't
Yeah.
do that. Don't be the
Probably
next
not
Ben
that one.
Simmons.
But I mean, there are probably other
Michael Jordan,
options you could
Kobe,
pick from, but
Kawhi.
nonetheless, I mean, it still wouldn't be bad, you know. I mean,
Right.
but yeah, no, I get that.
Yep. Should we tell them a little bit more about Brian and how we got communicated with Brian, connected to Brian?
Yeah, drop that one down fast, and then I'll just have drop that, and then say how people can find you and kind of any last messages you
Sure.
have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go with that. Good call.
So
Good call.
me and Gabe got connected through an app called Brian. I don't know where your connection is to Jeff. I would love to hear, even if you have time right now or even after our podcast, of how you just got connected with Jeff in the first place.
Yeah, dude. I'm from Cedar Rapids, where Jeff's from, in Iowa, and I just saw what he was. I graduated with like one of his sons,
Nice.
so I saw what he like the Murrays, who are like, you know, sponsors and everything for it.
Yeah.
So I just saw what he was doing, and that was when I started it. I think I reached out in like February or something, when like I was doing my just like trying to tie the mental side with like just health coaching and stuff, and I was like, nah, I mean, ultimately, I want to do this with like athletes and like up and coming kids and up and coming athletics. So I was like, I'm just going to jump ship, start doing that. And so I talked to Jeff because I knew he was kind of doing the mental side with like youth. And that's really how it kind of went. So then I just did a couple things for him. And then here we're kind of just, I'm local with him. So like it's a little different, but it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's still pretty cool. So that's how I'm with Brighton. And I mean, I like what they're doing. I like the app itself. So I just want to help it out, dude. Honestly, like eventually, hopefully I'll just get a sponsor on the podcast and just a little, you know, brought to you by Brighton, and we'll be set. But that's kind of where it came from for me. So, but then I also want to hear how you guys got connected. Probably LinkedIn or something. I don't know, but.
Yep, that's how you right on the money. Yep, Jeff, LinkedIn, man, he's a LinkedIn guru right now. He's on there heavy. So he posted something along the lines of how a lot of Gen Z students are struggling with their finances, and how finances have been a huge stressor for young folks that are in our age range. And I was like, you know what, this is something that's really been impacting not only myself and my friends as well. I was like, well, let me see what this is about. And Jeff offered a Zoom meeting, and I was like, all right, let's have the Zoom meeting. And I was speaking in Illinois at the time, and we had a meeting and we just hit it off. And he loves the energy, of course. That's the first thing he highlighted. And I was like, man, I just love the app too. And when I downloaded the app, I didn't know I was gonna use it as much as I do. I use it as my journaling thing.
Yeah, so do I.
I used to have the old school journal book and whatever, and I used to write it. But one of the things I didn't do when I didn't take that journal with me when I traveled, because I got some deep dark secrets in there. Some all my thoughts they're not all positive all the time. So I was
Yeah.
a little skeptical of taking that with me in my carry on or keeping it with me when I'm traveling. So when I was able to have access to Brian's journaling feature, I was like, yo, this is awesome, because I always take my phone with me. I don't leave my phone anywhere. It's like literally my business is all on this phone. So I need to make sure I secure it and it's always with me. And I love the AI feature on it as well, where you're able to, it gives you some like validation when you give your entry. And it's like, well, we can see that you're doing this really well and it's normal to feel this way. And I'm like, yo, okay, cool. So I'm not wilding out. Like, that's awesome. All right, cool. So that app I love the app personally. I like the merch. Obviously, this is what they're
I was gonna
rocking.
say,
So,
repping it. That's so soft too. I want to be honest.
yeah.
Like, it's not even a plug. That is one of the softest sweatshirts I have.
Yeah, no, it's so comfy, it's so soft. I don't wear a shirt under it because it feels so much comfortable without it. So, when I got this one, I was like, all right, this is cool. And then I like the graffiti one. It's okay to not be okay. But with all that, this being said, y'all listeners should download the app, Brighton, and let us know what you think, because I think it'd be an amazing just support to your life. It's not there to be anything more, anything less, but it's there to help you and support this crazy thing that we're trying to all navigate called life. And it makes it easier when you have a resource that's there in your pocket that you can reach out to or look down to and type to and just talk with.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself, Z.
I love it, man.
And then, how can people find you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so you can follow the Up to It organization or brand. We post. I mean, I cross post on both of them, so you'll find my personal there. But you can find us at Up to It AZ. And don't worry, just because it says AZ doesn't mean we don't travel nationally. It's just we pay homage to our home state. You know what I'm saying? Up to It AZ. And then you can follow me personally at Zion__Givens, GIV as in victory, ENS. And yeah, reach out. You got any questions, comments, man? Dude, don't. My DMs are always open. I always reply. I love a good meme or two or three. So if you got a good meme, send them my way. But with that being said, man, that's where you can follow me at.
Dude, thanks, Z. I mean, like I said, I think I learned so much from you in this conversation, but I have a feeling anyone listening would pick up quite a lot too, because we did cover quite a lot of ground.
We did. We sure did.
So that's what I'm thankful for. And this was really good to really get connected and going and making the next steps happen. So just closing this out with the Athletes Health Podcast, really just trying to give these messages out, help people out on that mental side and performance side, tying it together. But that is about it for this podcast here. So thanks, everyone.
Peace.